to care what I have to say? And so that imposter syndrome kicked in. And to be honest, here's the truth. There will always be someone out there that's smarter, someone who's better at your business than you. But you have to identify what makes you different and what you bring to the table, and you lean into that.
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, the podcast that delivers mentorship in every conversation. Each episode, we meet remarkable women who share the real moments, challenges, and breakthroughs that shape their journeys. These are stories that inspire, empower, and remind us of what is possible. I'm your host, Rainey Alfers, and I cannot wait for you to meet today's guest. Let's jump in and uncover your next mentor moment. Hey everyone, welcome to Working Women Mentor. I'm your host, Rainey Alfers, and today's guest is Kristen Nolan. She's the Senior Client Account Manager with Interview Valet, and we are totally peeking behind the scenes of what it's like to be on a podcast, to think about starting one, and to build that community around you with human connection. You are going to love Kristen's energy and enthusiasm for everyone around her and the mentorship and how she views it. As a military spouse, a military mom, a busy working woman, she gives us so much inspiration in today's episode. And, I have to say, just on a personal note, from the podcasting perspective, I just so enjoyed this conversation and what it's really like from her side. So you'll see what I mean inside the episode. Here we go. Let's meet Kristen. Kristen Nolan, welcome to Working Women Mentor. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been an interview I've been looking forward to so much because you are at the heart of the podcasting world right now. So it's very, very exciting. But before we get started, Kristen, would you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, my name is Kristen Nolan. I am a Senior Client Account Manager at Interview Valet. I'm also a military spouse, a mom of 3. And my personal belief is that relationships are the ultimate currency. My journey has taken me through corporate sales and account management, both in tech and retail. But something that has been consistent throughout my career is that I have a passion for connecting people and helping them grow. So in my current role at Interview Valet, I get to do exactly that. So I support thought leaders and entrepreneurs to help them amplify their voice through podcast guesting while helping them build real and strategic relationships that drive business results. So I get to balance a career that I love, raise my kids, and we move frequently. So it's not always easy, but it's taught me how to prioritize what matters most. I get to stay efficient, stay connected, and I'm really excited to be here today and share some of those lessons and hacks I've picked up along the way.
I love that. So many beautiful things. So before we get into all of that, because we've got so much, tell us about what your friends had to say. We ask all of our guests to text a friend. I know you have so many human connections. You probably texted families from around the world that you know and have spent time with. Share it about you with us, Kristen.
So it's always fun to hear what other people have to say. So I texted 3 friends and they just sent me, adjectives, right? So my friend Jama said energetic.
The word game. I said they're playing the word game with you.
Yes, exactly. And it was actually interesting because they each had overlap. So that was really interesting too. So Jama said energetic, outgoing, caring, generous, and thoughtful.
Okay.
Nadia said caring, selfless, energetic, and generous. Okay. And then Elizabeth said compassionate, generous, puts others first, and works tirelessly.
Aw. I feel like generous is a very common theme. I can feel the energy in you already.
Yes, exactly. And full disclosure, I did say this is for a podcast. So please, don't air any dirty laundry. So there's that too.
Hey, that's okay. I mean, the qualifier is totally fine. If anything else they have to say about you, they can send a separate text. But for this purpose only, we want all the good stuff about you, Kristen.
Absolutely.
So I love that. So you've built an entire career around human connection. Mm-hmm. And this probably stems back so far, from before being a military spouse even. Yeah. But take us back to where you realized this was just this super hero talent of yours. And this is you. And this is some way you can build a career on.
Yeah. So it's really funny. So I remember my first job out of college. I went to college in North Carolina. I took my first job in Chicago. And I was sitting in a training and you got salary plus commission. And they said to all of us, listen, don't expect to make commission your first 6 months. Nobody does that. And I can remember thinking of that and going, okay, I like the challenge. So in order to make commission, you'd have to average a certain amount each day of sales. I had no friends at the time. And I remember just thinking, okay, I'm up for this challenge. And so for me, it was, I'm going to make this happen. And I can tell you that every single month that I was at that job, I made commission. Now it was
Girl,
not
that's awesome.
yeah, it was not a large commission by any means, but I
It's
made
okay.
commission. And I think what it was is that it was that drive. And I always look at it as I look at my clients as partners, right? And so I will often tell them that I want to connect with them and I want to help them be successful because them being successful means that I'm successful. If they're not successful, I'm not successful in what I'm doing. So in every single situation that I do, I want to make sure that we're connecting and I'm giving them every single one of the tools that they need to be successful. And so I think that's really what kind of makes the difference there.
Whenever you think about, I mean, even the military spouse in you, the mom of you, who's not only you're navigating all of these changes, your family is as a whole. Like everybody has some change with them, and you're teaching them how to connect with others and build that community. So take me into that circumstance because, while it's a lot different, I imagine, than your everyday.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things and the most difficult for me because I'm organized, I like to have everything sort of like, I don't want to say perfect because there is no such thing as perfect. But I think for me, everything is messy, right? Like, even motherhood. Before I became a mom, my kids will never walk around with runny noses. And God has humbled me because if you saw my kids, you would be like, this is a hot mess express coming through here. But I think what it's really taught me is that we don't have to have the perfect conditions, right? We have to just show up anyway. And we have to show up with clarity and resilience and purpose. And that, when my husband's deployed, like right now, I'm in week 8 of a 10-week course. So my husband's been gone. I can plan and I can be organized. And my 4-year-old will still end up in the ER 2 Sundays in a row.
Oh, yeah.
But you quickly learn to kind of prioritize what matters and then you let go of things that don't. And so when I think about my kids, I have the 4-year-old that I mentioned, and then I also have a 10 and a 12-year-old. We moved last summer. And one of the biggest concerns that I had, especially with them at their age, was like, how are they going to make friends, right?
Yeah.
At 10 and 12-year friends are so important.
We all have that concern, Kristen.
Yeah.
I mean, at any age.
Yeah. And when I tell you, my kids have just come in and found their people. And to be honest, it's been easier for them to make the transition sometimes than it is with me. But I see so much resilience in them that's what kind of helps me continue to show up and continue to kind of push through some of those days that feel tough.
Yeah, because when you see other people, and that applies to everything, when you see
Mhm.
everyone else successful around you, your people you love the most,
Yeah.
it brightens your day. It does keep you motivated. And so you have to take this sense of community. Tell me what it's like amongst the other moms, amongst the other working moms, the busy professionals that are trying to do what you're doing every day. I mean, what is that like when you come into a new place and you don't know anyone? You mentioned that it is a little hard to make new friends.
Yeah. And I think what it is, it's being consistent, right? So, like in the beginning, it feels very difficult, right? There are times where I'll feel kind of out of place, I'll feel a little uncomfortable, but I always feel in those periods or phases of uncomfortability is where we grow the most, right? It forces you sort of out of that comfort zone. And so, when you consistently show up and other people see that, you're going to find the right people to connect with. Not everyone is your person. Not everyone is going to be your connector. So I think the biggest thing that has worked for me is continue to show up. You will find that if somebody needs something, I am the first person to volunteer. You need your kid to have somebody
Picked up from somewhere or something,
Yes.
you're going to be there.
Yes, I am your go-to girl. I am the first person to sign up for, something at the school. And so I think what happens is people see that you're a reliable person, your name continues to pop up. So then they see, okay, this person is reliable. I want to get to know her better. I want to connect with her. And so it just
Yeah.
sort of, it happens more organically.
I was thinking about you in this conversation today. I was reading Mel Robbins' book, Let Them. And part of the book, she talks about moving to a new place and not knowing anyone and literally not having any friends. And she's like, my kids dragged me across the street and knocked on the door and they're like, my mom wants to meet your wife. like they made her go and do this. And then she said, really so much of it is that proximity and also just saying, "Hey, I'm new here. I'm Rainy, I'm Kristen. How are you? Just moved here from here. My husband's on this deployment," or whatever it is. And it's like she said, you'd be surprised within that 1 year time how many new friends, how many people that, like you said, you show up for when you say something like that actually are excited to meet you and hang out with you and connect. And I thought it was such a great reminder of connecting at any age, right? From your
Mhm.
10-year-old, to 60, just
Yep.
everywhere in between, we're using the same tools. It's, "Hey, I'm Rainy, I'm new here." And it's that simple, but it's just that practice and putting yourself out there. And I know that you probably have to do that time and time again. So kudos to you. And also supporting the other moms, because I know that does help build your community around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that story is so funny because as you mentioned it, one of the ladies, my friend Nadia, that I mentioned that I had texted, we actually met because my son Max was in a summer camp and he came home with a slip of paper and said, "I need you to call my friend Sam's mom and set up a play date."
I love that.
And my husband was actually on a deployment at the time. And Landry was, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 12 weeks old at the time. And I was not leaving my house with 3 kids. And I called her and we became fast friends. So, there is that unexpected things that happen. And so, even my kids have become connectors for sure.
We all have it in us somewhere. We just have
Yeah.
to find it and let it loose.
Yes,
So let's
exactly.
talk a little bit about mentorship, because I know even in this situation we're talking about, it's crucial. But have you had a mentor in your life that you can think of that has really made an impression on you and given you something to change the way you are in that trajectory in your life, Kristen?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my most recent stories. So, Tom, the CEO of our company, he meets with everyone twice a year. And I can remember our last conversation. And I personally have been on a self awareness journey, right?
Good for you.
And one of the things that we had brought up that I had already kind of self-identified was that I am always willing to go above and beyond. If a client says that they need something, I'm not just going to do it. I'm going to take it to like the next level. That's what I do all the time. But it is also something that is going to burn me out. So for me, having that self-awareness and being able to identify like, hey, I'm starting to get to this point where I can see that I'm going down the path of feeling
Too
that
much.
burnout. Yeah.
Hmm.
And being able to identify that and saying, how am I going to be able to adjust what I'm doing to prevent that from happening? And so, what I've found is that I also have people surrounding me, like my operations manager. So, my husband was leaving for 10 weeks and I was having a conversation with her, and she could just tell I was feeling a little overwhelmed. And she said to me, "What day are you taking next week?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? I don't need a day next week. Like, I'm fine. I'm juggling all these things. I'm fine." And she said, "No, you need a day next week." And I said, "I'll look at my calendar." And I thought about it and I said, "You know what? I am going to take a day next week." And I live in Tampa. So I decided that I was going to take a day and I was going to take a book. I have a stack of books that I'm constantly reading that I
Yeah.
never get to.
Yes.
And I took a book, I blocked off my calendar, and I went to the beach for 4 hours without my kids, without work. And I sat and I recharged my batteries. I think oftentimes we're working on a battery at 20, 30, 40%, and we're expecting to get, 100% results. But we can't do that if we're not recharging our batteries. So, what I think has been super crucial for me is to have people around me that can also help me identify those gaps.
So, when you say that you meet with Tom twice a year and he's been an incredible mentor to you, how does he see that in you? Like, is he been someone who has taught you how to look at yourself or given you that honest feedback? Or what did he leave with you that helped you make these changes and apply them to your life?
Yeah. So I think Tom is just a small piece of the puzzle, right? When I think of mentorship, maybe you're meeting with someone maybe once a week or regularly. I look at it from a lens of having multiple people. So I meet with Tom, I'll have conversations with my operations manager. I'll have conversations with my colleagues. Hey, I have this issue that I'm dealing with. Can I get your perspective? Can you give me some insights on what you think this looks like from a different lens. I have a therapist that I will talk through things and get an outside perspective of someone that doesn't know anything about it. And so that way I can have a well-balanced view of all the things that are going on and what I'm dealing with.
And well balanced is a wonderful place to be. I know it's so nice when you have multiple places to seek guidance and just trust. And, who doesn't love a therapist? Anytime you want to talk with someone, you don't have to burden them
Yeah.
as your friends. How do you find yourself mentoring with your clients and your community through listening? Because as we know, it's a wonderful skill to have when assessing and being that person for other people.
Yeah. So I think one of the things about listening and truly connecting with people is such an underrated skill, both professionally and personally. When we truly take the time to listen to someone, they tell us things we didn't even ask, right? So we gain even more insights outside of what we ask. I can ask a direct question, and people don't give you just a general direct answer. They're going to give you answer and context usually. And so that can lead to an even deeper connection. And then I think having a childlike curiosity where we can continue to learn. And as I mentioned this earlier, one of our core values at Interview Valet, and I live this every day, is relationships are the ultimate currency. So I think if we're really taking the time to actively listen and connect, that's a great way to do this.
What would be a good exercise for someone who's trying to become a better listener and really be as good as you at what human connection feels like and looks like, Kristen?
So this is going to sound a little crazy.
No, we're all ears.
Okay. Have you seen those little like salt time? Like, I guess it's like a salt timer. This is a crazy thing. My son is very impulsive and will answer questions very quickly. So I got him one of these to put on his desk at school, but you can get them on Amazon and they're like 30 seconds or a minute. I would ask a question and flip the timer and wait 30 seconds before you answer. Give the person 30 seconds to answer before you chime in, right? You're just listening for at least 30 seconds and then you give an answer. Because I think sometimes we are interrupting in a conversation, not like in a bad way. We have something to say and we want to say it. And so it's very quick to sort of chime in. And I think it's really just about slowing down and taking the time to just really hone in and listen, maybe without even having to respond to it.
My significant other, he always, sometimes we talk a lot and sometimes I'm slow to respond to something. And he's like, hello, are you listening to me? And I'm just like, yes, I'm listening so much to you that I am literally thinking about it and wanting to give you such a thoughtful response. And I mean that. It's not a deflection. I think sometimes people aren't used to that. Like you said, that rapid fire, back and fire. Oh my gosh, I've got something to say. I've got something to say. It's
Yep.
this exciting. And we have that kind of conversation too. But sometimes I catch myself like my pauses afterward are a little longer because I truly care about what the other person is saying, and depending how long your pause is, it can almost be a little concerning on the other side because as a society, we're so used to that banter back and forth. But it really does matter. I think if someone's going to take the time to spend with you, I have to even remind myself with my team or put my phone down, look at them. But sure, your email can wait a minute. My son, the same thing. It's like, just give that full attention and all those ears and listen. And it's amazing how much different those few minutes can be when you do that.
Yeah. And I think also, even if you say, hey, just give me a minute, let me kind of process this, because I also think there is so much power in taking a moment to process the information so that we're coming from a place of logic versus emotion, right? If we're making a very emotional response, and I do this all the time where I'll say something, or whether it's to my kids or to a coworker or something, and then I'll get home later and be like, why did I say that?
Yeah.
I should have said this.
I could have waited. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally had an interaction with a coworker for 3 days. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go back and explain this. And so then it was like this whole big thing. And had I just maybe given a little more context in the beginning, and the coworker is completely like, everything's fine. I'm over here overthinking it. But it's because I didn't think it through in the beginning. I was working quickly, which is what we're all inclined to do, right? We want to get this task done so we can move on to the next one. Whereas if we just kind of slow down, I think it's a little bit better.
I think when I do that, Kristen, it's like my subconscious then goes to work all night long. It'll pop back up in the middle of the night in my dreams or something in some way because I have not finished it in my mind. It's like still lingering. And I wake up with a whole new perspective after I've had 6+ hours to think about it. So it's just funny how we process as humans. But on that note of like processing and mentorship, I have to ask you more about the military community
Yeah.
because so many of our listeners are probably in your situation, know someone in military, are in it themselves. What is it like? I mean, if I'm new to it, I mean, what is the mentorship like that you can seek or be around, or take us through your community?
Yeah. So there are tons and tons and tons of spouses groups online and in person. And, pre kids and when I had more time, I was actively involved there. I did a ton of volunteer work. And as I've gotten older and taken on more responsibilities and I work more, I found more value in one on one friendships. So I found that the value for me comes from friend to friend introductions. The military community is very small. So last summer, we moved from North Carolina to Tampa. I had a lot of friends that were like, hey, I want to introduce you to so and so. That was more valuable in this particular phase of life that I'm in. And then I think just organically, right? Attending events. That's an easy way. My husband's Army, so we'll have something called FRG or different things like that. Each branch has their own different kind of events, but just showing up at those events, you can meet people that have similar interests. And again, just, the volunteer perspective of things. There are spouses clubs and different things like that. I will tell you, one of my biggest mentors as a young spouse was my husband's battalion commander's wife. I mean, she came in
Oh,
and she
wow.
was like, I want you to be,
Make it as easy on
successful.
you.
Yeah, make it as easy as possible. So like, she was like, any questions you have, like my phone is open, whatever you need, just
How
ask
kind.
for it and I'll help you. And so that was a great opportunity to just have an open line of communication.
Did you take her up on it?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
we
some
are,
people don't, right? Some
yeah.
people are, when you people offer, you're like, oh, thanks, I will. But then we like suck it up and try to figure it out all of ourselves.
Yeah, she became a great friend. I mean,
Good.
she came to our wedding, she co-planned the baby shower for my son. I mean, she just became such a good friend and her husband is now retired. We still keep in touch. She reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting a podcast. Can you give me any tips and tricks there?" And
Love
so
it.
we still keep in contact. In fact, one of my new clients knows her, so we were talking about that. The world is so small. So, pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it really is. And
Mhm.
and you get what you give a lot of
Mhm.
times, isn't it? Isn't that
Absolutely.
that's saying very true?
Yeah.
Well, on this topic of podcasting, I mean, we have to talk podcasting because you have such an interesting role, in my opinion. I mean, we were talking offline before the show and about guest management and how we show up for podcasts and just like the variety of topics that come with what we're doing today. I love that you're out there podcasting. And so I'm curious what you would say to someone who is listening to us and just thinking, I want to be on a podcast too. I've got something to say or an impact or promote my brand. What are the first steps that you can tell them? Where do they start?
So, what I would start with is rip the Band-Aid off. I remember, Tom had called a couple of us into a meeting and we were asked, if we would like to be podcast guests. And my immediate thought, and I said this on the meeting, which he was probably like, I made a huge mistake. Just kidding. But I was like, who's going to care what I have to say? And so that imposter syndrome kind of kicked in. And, to be honest, here's the truth. There will always be someone out there that's smarter, someone who's better at your business than you. But you have to identify what makes you different and what you bring to the table, and you lean into that, right? So if you can identify 3 to 4 things that you do really, really, really well and talk about those, rip the Band-Aid off, do your first interview. It may not be your best, but it's a great opportunity to build your confidence and grow and learn.
Ever thought about starting a podcast but got stuck on the tech, the time, or what to even say? You're not alone. I've been there. And that's why I created the 7-day AI-powered podcast launch course to help women like you go from idea to launch, fast, smart, and without all the overwhelm. Who has time for that? And to get you started, I'm giving you my 50 favorite ChatGPT prompts to help you plan your content, name your show, and find your voice. Head over to workingwomenmentor.com to grab the prompts and start building the platform you've been putting off for too long. Building your confidence, you make it sound very easy. And I know that, I mean, clearly there's steps we can take to be
Yes.
better at this. But, Because some people just think of like being on a podcast as public speaking, standing in front of an audience, and it's nothing like that.
Mhm.
Right? What are the fears that you're hearing from the people you represent? What can we do actionably to boost our confidence?
Yeah. So, what I suggest, like to someone starting out and having those initial jitters, some hosts will do something called a pre call where you can connect before an interview, get to know each other, talk about the episode, really just get a better idea of what to expect. And then that way you're going into the interview feeling confident and like you know what you're going to talk about. I also do a lot of strategy with my clients. So, one thing that I think comes natural is a lot of hosts, I would say probably 95% of hosts will say, tell us what you do. It is very natural for people to feel like it's time to recite their resume. And it'll,
Oh yeah. I've
it's something,
I've heard some long ones.
yes,
Yes.
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 I have clients and I'm like, please stop talking about middle school. No one cares what you did in middle school, not whatever. So I will coach clients on like how to build that initial connection and be impactful and make it a 30-second, 1 minute thing where you talk about what it is that you do, why you do it, and how you connect with the audience. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't do appropriately is at the end of a podcast, the host will say, how can we find you? And people will rattle off 14 and a half places to find them. No one's writing this down. They're working out, they're driving in a car. You have to have one. So, really, just giving clients the basics of how you can go in so people know who you are, what you do, and your personality and how they can find you. If you can get that down and you can have a good conversation, you're going to crush it.
I absolutely agree. From a host, and I've been on both sides of the
Yeah.
table, just like you, right? But like
Uh-huh.
from a hosting perspective, I can remember the very first person who wanted to do a pre call. And I just thought, well, sure, like, why not? It wasn't something that we promoted or offered as like standard protocol as part of our process, if you will. But, I found that over the years, the pre calls that I've done make for an incredible episode. I don't think they're required because, like, you and I have exchanged emails over the years, that kind of thing, but we've never met and connected until today about this topic.
Yep.
But those pre calls, Kristen, I think they really are great ideas. I mean, sometimes there is a time constraint on one person's side or the other. But you just go into that episode with a sense of familiarity that eases any confidence issues. And I also feel like if you just approach it from a perspective of it's a call with a friend. And so it's sort of that get to that level of comfort on the conversation, and it makes for such a natural show.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, our CEO, has talked about how podcasts are the perfect medium for introverts, right? You're not on a big stage in front of 1,000 people. You're
Just the
talking
two
to,
of us.
yep, it's just the two of us. And the great thing about what I always tell my clients, I'm like, the best podcast I listen to, and I may sound like a crazy, nosy person, it sounds like you're sitting in a coffee shop overhearing two people have a conversation of value to you. And I think that that is like the best podcast to listen to because you're just listening in on a conversation.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
What do you think most people get wrong when they're trying to land an interview? Because you do this for a profession. You can land interviews for clients, but there's some people out there who haven't hired someone yet to help them navigate this water. What does that look like for them if they don't have you, Kristen? That's
So,
hard.
yeah, well, I think the biggest thing that people do wrong with podcast guesting is the audience. I can't tell you how many clients that I get that we're talking about their ideal audience and they say, I want to be on Joe Rogan. And listen, I'm not, nothing against Joe Rogan at all. They want him not because of his podcast, the content. They
Right.
want him because it's a big podcast. And to me,
Yes.
that's a red flag. And I'll tell you in other mediums, radio, like, yes, the more people, the better. That makes sense. But we always say bigger isn't better, better is better. And so the beauty of podcasting is that it's extremely targeted, right? If you're selling
Very much.
laundry soap, say, and you need to get in front of laundromat owners, there's a podcast for that. Is it better to be on a podcast with 1,000 of your targeted people who could all become clients of yours and care what you have to say? Or is it
100%.
better to be on a podcast of 10,000 people that are like, who is this girl? I don't care anything about what she's talking about. And they're turning you off. You're not going to have the same success because they don't care about what you're talking about. So let's find the right audience for you and let's find your people.
What is one of your behind the scene moments that you have that make you realize what a powerful platform that podcasting can be? Because the voices can be heard around like this conversation that someone's overhearing in a coffee shop can be heard around the world. What are some memories that you have that illustrated that point to you?
Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit personal here. I had a client. His name is General Martin. He is a retired general in the Army, and he wrote a book, The Bipolar General, and it's all about his story as a two-star general in the Army, and he was diagnosed with bipolarism, the two-star level. It was extremely impactful for me because my brother was bipolar and committed suicide in 2018. And so his primary mission was not only to promote his book, but also to promote awareness about bipolar disorder. And so being able to work with him was not only something that kind of filled my bucket professionally, but it was also something that I could do to also help promote something in my brother's name. So that for me was really impactful. I also had one of our former clients. He wasn't one of my clients, but I follow him on Instagram and love, love, love him. His name is Peter Mutabazi. You should follow him too.
Okay.
And he was an orphan and he grew up and became a single foster father. And he was a podcast guest on Christopher Lochhead's Follow Your Different. He was telling Christopher that he wanted to foster another child, but the one thing standing in his way was that he needed a larger vehicle. And so Christopher wrote him a check for $10,000 so he could then foster another child. So there is so much connection that can happen and so much, lives that can be changed through podcasting
I
that,
love that.
are going on that people may not even have any idea about. But there is so much good in the podcasting world.
Where do you see the podcasting heading, the direction of it over the next few years? I mean, we've come a long way in like advertising, for example, and technology and audience. What are you envisioning for our future in podcasting?
I think it's interesting, right? So I think during COVID, podcasting was sort of this like project that a lot of people got into. Hey, everyone can have their own podcast. And I think a lot of people did it as a hobby. And so we're seeing it, I think now, become more niche and more intentional,
Mm.
where we're seeing like higher quality, more relatability, and more value. And so I think that the quality of podcasts are going to continue to increase. I think we're also going to see that podcasts are going to become more niche down, right? We're going to stop trying to be everything to everyone, and we're going to have people speaking more directly to the audience that they care about the most. And I think authenticity and consistency are going to be paramount. I have seen a lot of podcasts lately where they're inconsistent posting, and I do feel like a lot of those are probably not going to be in it for the long haul, right? And I
Hmm.
think in the digital age of AI, it makes it easier for content creation. But I also think that it also drives this need for a genuine connection. So I think that while AI is sort of, and I use AI a lot with my clients. So I think I use it as like a baseline to give clients ideas. And then I encourage them to take those ideas and make it their own. So I see that, and I predict that we're going to see just more genuine, higher level podcasts that are more focused. That's what I predict.
Oh, that's a great prediction. It's that AI piece. It helps us get rid of all the stuff that we don't want to use our brain power for, right? And then allow us to dig deeper and to that niche, to that connection. And I think that is what is so beautiful about it. And so the fact that you're using it to help your guest. So as you do that, I have a question about that because we touched on in the very beginning your role at Interview Valet, but will you give us like a little bit more background about what you do, what you bring to the table? For some people, I don't even know if everyone understands it. There are people like you in this world that can get them on a podcast that can help them and their voice as well. So give me kind of the 101.
Really kind of like the basic level is we help clients get on podcasts that fit their ideal client profile. Now, I would say that we do things a little different where I provide strategy behind that, right? So we're not just like a booking agency. I am coaching and strategizing with my clients. So as I mentioned previously, I'm helping guide them through the process of how to be great guests, how to answer that first foundational question. We will do the first couple of podcast episodes. We'll do an interview analysis where we provide feedback. Hey, this is what you did really well. These are things that we think you could work on.
It's great.
I say like a lot. In the analysis, it'll have these words you said 40 times. Be more aware of that so next time you use those words less. You had 40% of the conversation. The host had 60% of the conversation. We want to see it more 50-50 so it's more conversational. Just different little tips and tricks to make sure that you're being a great guest and you're having good results with the conversation. I'm also strategizing from what is your ideal client? What does that look like? I have a client right now that everything on ChatGPT puts him as a marketer. That's not what he's targeting. So we're working on a rebrand for him. And so I'm strategizing with him on how do we target the right shows and how do we position him to lean into the executive coach role that he's in. And so it goes well beyond just finding him and booking him on podcasts, and it's helping him be positioned and be a great guest. And what does that look like to promote his online presence as well?
Kristen, you sound like a brand strategist. I mean, I don't know what ChatGPT would say about this, but to me, there's so much more than just booking someone on a show, right? You're helping people find their voice and then giving them an outlet to share it. I mean, that's incredible. Kristen, we mentioned burnout earlier, and I'm curious, what are your daily habits? Because all of us get to that stage, regardless of how amazing we are at balancing everything, right? What's something you do every day to keep you balanced?
So mine comes down to organization. So my organization is paramount to everything. I use my work calendar for everything. If my colleagues went into my work calendar, they would probably think I'm a little bit crazy. I keep track of everything, but I also use it as a tool, right? So like things come at us on the fly. You know, a girlfriend wants to have lunch. And so I'm able to then go into my calendar and say, hey, what can I shift around so that I can make myself available to do that? Or I want to go and get my nails done. I will literally schedule that so that I have complete control. And I also do planning at the beginning of the week so that I can do Z to A planning of my week. So I know what I need to get done and when I can get it done. And then I also take time to go and spend a couple of hours at the beach or take a walk or call a girlfriend, you know, different things like that. And it's just being self-aware and identifying when I'm getting to that phase where I'm feeling a little out of sorts or not working to my best potential.
Right. It's amazing. We feel like we become a slave to our calendar, but really it frees us. I mean, I worked on a project so crazy late last night. I have no idea how I was even awake, but I guess I'm normally asleep much earlier, but I was in this flow and I was feeling it. And I'm just like, I'm finishing this thing. And when I got up this morning, I adjusted my calendar and it accounted for all of those hours on that project. Like every little thing I go back and adjust because it helps me understand what I did do, what I didn't do, and what I want to leave windows for. Like you said, the girlfriend who wants to have lunch. I mean, my girlfriends right now, it's like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 weeks from now. How does that sound? You know, I mean, you really have to shift and balance it. So a great reminder, a great reminder. Kristen, what is your one mentor moment you want to leave our audience with today? It's what we're going to remember you by and value all your mentorship that you've shared with us for.
Sometimes the most valuable mentorship is not just about doing more. It's about recognizing when you want to step back and showing up as your best self.
Stepping back every now and then is such a huge vantage point, isn't it? You can really see a little bit better. I love that. Kristen, where can we find you and support you?
Absolutely. So you can find me at Interview Valet with a V.com/Kristen, and that's Kristen.
Now, you're not going to give us like 5 or 10 other things, are you, where we can find you?
I promise you I'm not. And you will find all of my information there. I would love for you to add me on all of my social medias there. Add me on LinkedIn from there, and I would love to connect with you.
Well, we'll make sure to have it in show notes. And thanks for sharing all your tips today. I mean, really just about human connection, mentorship, and life transitioning. It feels good knowing, like, I wish you would move into my neighborhood. You just are like
Yes.
the perfect person who I want to be transplanted into Dallas. And
Yes. I would love it. We can have
I
wine
love it.
together.
Thanks for joining us, Kristen. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Hey, wait, before you go, I have one ask. Would you please leave us a review? Tapping on those stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to this will really help us. It'll spread the word and your voice and your impact as well, because every episode we are giving mentor moments. And I hope you can continue this conversation with us at workingwomenmentor.com. To apply to be a guest, find show notes and episode details. And if you've ever wanted to start a podcast, we've got the perfect course for you. Follow us on Instagram at Working Women Mentor and DM us the word mentor, and I'll send you over our free guide on mentorship so you can incorporate it into your life. Thanks so much for joining us. And until then, cheers until the next episode.